making, let's say, like $30 an hour, that's considered a good amount of pay. But when maybe you start a business and you're able to make an equivalent of 90 or 120 or $200 an hour, your perspective changes, your value of money changes. What's going on, everybody? Kelland and Mark Wilson, digitalfreedommovement.com. On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about perspective and how it can change, from time to time and just over time in general. So how do we even start this one off, Mark? I would say your perspective can change in many, many ways. I think to start here, though, we're going to talk about financial perspective. So, in my opinion, we're all kind of brought up the same way. Go to school, get a job. And, if you're making, let's say, like $30 an hour, that's considered a good amount of pay. But when maybe you start a business and you're able to make an equivalent of 90 or 120 or $200 an hour, your perspective changes, your value of money changes. And, that's just one way, but go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, for sure. And it was a topic that we were talking about a little bit earlier. And it's crazy to think we said that like, hey, like I didn't have the best month ever. And I made like $20,000. And it was just like, oh, go from like not thinking I had the best month ever of making $20,000 in 1 month to before where we were making like $4,000 a month or something. And we're like, yeah, that's a decent living. Like that's decent. And now we think $20,000 in 1 month is just not enough. And it's just crazy how that works and how that all changes. When you know that your potential is so much higher and you know that you've hit bigger heights, regardless, you're going to adjust. And it's just like when you're a kid, you thought that riding a bicycle was super hard. Now as an adult, you jump on that bicycle, you're like, this is the easiest thing in the world. You just go, right?
Actually, that is so true. Starting a business is like riding a bike. It's only hard the first time you do it. But yeah, it's like, actually talking about mistakes, I'm going to talk about some mistakes that I made. So some of the mistakes that I made was when I started making more money, I started to spend more money. And I, ended up blowing a lot of money on going out for dinners and, oh, don't worry, guys, I'll grab the tab. And, investment, well, like in bad investments as well, like cars and you guys know what I'm talking about. And so as your income increases, your, what would you call that? Your quality of life, or you know what I mean? That you end up buying more shit you don't need because you can afford to. And what happened to me is it got to a point where like now my monthly expenses are $10,000 a month. So if I don't make 10K a month, I'm going in the hole. Or if I make just 10K, like I'm flat even. I'm not making it anywhere. So, whereas I look back, 5 years ago when I was a heavy duty mechanic, making $3,000 a month, I think about that now and I'm like, wow, like now I need to make 10 just to pay my bills. And if I make 10K, that's a shitty month. That's a bad month. And so, again, just back to the perspective, the value of money, it's crazy. But yeah, and then not only that, but I feel like, the value of your own time is applicable as well. That, have perspective on the value of what you're worth and what your time's worth. So that's all I
Well,
have to say.
100%. Like you see, and you'll see that whole value of time thing go with a lot of people. Some people that have been laid off over the last year. Obviously, the pandemic has hit a lot of different people in a really harsh way. And some of these people were making like $40 an hour before. And it's just like, well, this job will pay me $23 an hour. And it's just like, no, I'm worth $40 an hour now, right? Like it's just the concept has changed. Is that they value their time so much more, so they won't underappreciate themselves. And it's just like us. I could never imagine going back to a job where I was getting paid an hourly wage. It doesn't make sense where so many people find comfort in that. So our perspective is we know that we have an abundance of value. We know that we can make an abundance of money anytime that we apply ourselves. So why would we want to strap ourselves into only making a limit per hour? So the perspective is just totally shifted. But I just want to go back to one point that you're hitting with the quality of life thing. I think anytime that you start leveling up in life and making more, you don't know what you could do with it, because it's essentially like, you're like, oh, I got this free money now. I never had this money before. So you just start spending it all these different places. And then you get that perspective afterwards. You're like, holy shit, I just blew through 200K. I wouldn't make that in 4 years before. And you're like, what do I have to show for it? And I think every single person I've ever talked to that's gone through those like rankings of leveling themselves up in entrepreneurship or whatever career that they've been able to make that high income with has all gone through the same thing. When they first get rich, they fuck up hard.
Like people win the lottery, right? You blow it all a dumb shit and end up broke in a few years, right?
Oh, 100%, man. I think it's like 80% of lotto winners end up worse off than they were before they won the lottery.
Well, it's crazy. So, be smart. Saving a dollar is the same thing as making one. There's some perspective for you. Thank you guys for everybody who checked this out. As well, thank you to all of you people out there who gave us a 5-star review on the podcast. Muchly appreciated. If you guys have any questions, concerns, or input, please do feel free to email us at info@digitalfreedommovement.com. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.
Thank you for tuning in to the Online Entrepreneur Experience by DFM. We want to hear from you. If you have any questions for Kelland or Mark to answer on our next episode, email us at info@digitalfreedommovement.com. And we'd love to answer any of your questions. And don't forget to tune in next week for another amazing experience.